Okay, we're good to go. So I haven't checked your marks yet, but I assume you all got like 90 on the exam, right? People are telling me they feel good about it. It was easy, right? Yeah? Sure. Okay, we'll go through it. I don't think we'll get through the whole thing, but I'm going to run through just a few slides on Kitwana, do a summary. I have top hat questions for the end, and then we'll talk through the exam. So let's run through it. I'm going to be very quick with the lecture portion, like maybe 10 minutes, 10, 15 minutes. So some announcements. I'm going to discuss our last article, which you guys read, and then we'll do the post-final exam review. But if you want to hang out tonight, here's two events. The Black Cultural Center grand opening is happening right now, all day today. And there are performances at 5 o'clock. There's a community meal. There's a panel at 6 and a community meal at 7:30. So people who are interested in checking out our new Black Cultural Center, you also check it out. There's also an event also in the Red Gym. I don't have a room number, but you saw it on Facebook, mass incarceration and Wisconsin sentencing policy. So if you guys want to check that out, throw it up on the screen here. This is popping off tonight at 6:30. So if it's something you want to check out, check it out. Okay, so Bakari Kitwana's chapter that we read is called, I don't have the title here, The Challenge of Rap Music from Cultural Movement to Political Power. And it's roughly, I think there's a lot of the stuff in this short 10 pages. It talks a lot about stuff that we've been talking about throughout the course. So I'm going to give a little summary, and then I'm going to give a little critique, and we'll move on. So the interesting thing about it, right, let's focus on his thesis, what I think is a strong point, what I think is the interesting point and relevant point about this chapter. So he's talking about how hip-hop needs to create this unified front. And what kind of unified front is he talking about? He identifies this tension or this distinction between commercial hip-hop and what he variously, I don't think he uses the term underground, but he talks about local hip-hop, and I don't think he uses the term conscious either, which is interesting, that he's not juxtaposing commercial and conscious. But instead, he's juxtaposing commercial with grassroots or local or with around the way, right? And he argues that these sectors of hip-hop, the grassroots sector and the commercial sector, need to come together and form an alliance. And what's the purpose of that alliance? That alliance is to advance a black agenda or a black political agenda. And so, although he doesn't talk about a tension, I think he talks around the tension or the contradiction. We generally talk about how conscious hip-hop or underground hip-hop or grassroots hip-hop criticizes commercial hip-hop as not real. And he tries to, and he's, while not denying that, he talks about how there's sort of this dialectical relationship where what is underground sets the trend, sets the agenda, which gets, even if it's in a somewhat watered down way, becomes what is the mainstream. So there, and then mainstream hip hop is what introduces, people on a broader level, including around the world. He's talking just about in the U.S., but you can extrapolate this, right? People become interested in hip-hop. People's first encounter is with the more commercial hip-hop. But if they're really moved by it, they get into it, and then they start to learn about the culture, the values, and they may come to the more conscious, the more grassroots hip-hop and develop it that way. So rather than seeing it as a necessarily, even if there's a tension, as a necessarily contradictory thing, commercial hip-hop versus conscious, or commercial versus underground, commercial versus non-commercial, whatever, he is suggesting that there can be a productive dialectic between them. And he suggests that just as hip-hop culture defined itself, members of the hip-hop culture, people who were practitioners of hip-hop, defined hip-hop as a culture against this hegemonic idea that tried to construct rap as merely a genre, which is something that I talked about at the beginning of this course. I talked about how, in the 80s, it wasn't clear, this whole language that we have of hip-hop as a culture, that was a conscious and theoretical and activist and political movement that people like KRS and Bambaataa and Chuck D, who Kitwana recognizes as sort of theorizing this idea of hip-hop as something more than just music, as something more than just a cool way of dancing or acting or talking, but something that actually represents cultural values. So Kitwana is saying in the same way as hip-hop organically or inherently developed that theory and that idea, which now has become somewhat hegemonic among people who identify as hip-hop. We all say, at least there's these slogans. People say, rap is something you do, hip-hop is something you live. We have this, I've been arguing to you that a lot of people still think of hip-hop as a genre, even though they pay lip service to the idea that it's a culture. At least that idea that it's a culture has penetrated widely. So Kitwana is arguing that analogously, hip-hop adherents should define hip-hop's political agenda in a similar kind of way, should come together. Both the underground and the grassroots should come together and define, what counts and what doesn't count. What are the issues that we stand on? What are the lines that we won't cross? Those kinds of issues. So I have my critiques of that, but I want to just first outline that. We'll get into the critiques in my last slide. I have like 3 or 4 slides. Okay, so HipHop Generation. So I mentioned to you guys before that Bakari Kitwana is the guy who coins this term, the HipHop Generation. And the way he defines the HipHop Generation is young, right? He's writing this in the early 2000s. Young African Americans born between 1965 and 1984. So I have problematized to you this idea of the hip-hop. So let me recap it first. So that's his definition of what is the hip-hop generation. It's African Americans, and they're born between this period. And he argues that hip-hop is the core cultural influence for this demographic. The reciprocal, I already talked about this conflict, with this generational conflict I'll get to. So my criticism that I've given you about the hip-hop generation is actually that contradicts this very thing that he's celebrating, right? This work that we did as hip-hoppers to identify hip-hop as a culture as opposed to a genre. If any of you guys have seen The Get Down, there's this idea of like hip-hop as a culture that we pass down from one generation to another. And if we limit hip-hop to a generation, then that's contradictory to the whole idea of hip-hop as a culture. It doesn't only exclude, and if we're thinking about African Americans in the restrictive US-centric sense, which I am in favor more of the diasporic idea of blackness and hip-hop as a black culture in this anti-essentialist and diasporic way of thinking about blackness, we're limiting it conceptually. And also, if you essentialize it, if you think about it as African American in the racially essentialist terms, then it forces this this tension, this I would call a negative dialectic with white hip-hoppers either in the US or outside, which we've seen a lot of these examples, where they have to argue that hip-hop is not black in order to include themselves. And that's premised on a racially essentialist idea of what it means to say hip-hop is black, as opposed to a strategically essentialist idea or a political idea, and understanding that black as a black culture, that doesn't mean that you can't, if you're white, appreciate hip-hop, participate in hip-hop. Instead, what it means is, in so doing, you need to have a political and serious solidaristic commitment to black struggle, right? That's what I've been arguing. So I think that this narrow way of thinking about hip-hop as a generation mitigates against that. That's my critique. The other critique is the way that he conflates when he talks about the bitter generational divide between the hip-hop generation and the civil rights / black power generation of our parents, right? Our, meaning he's talking about African Americans born in this period, which he falls into, 1965 and 85. So that generation, which is the post-civil rights generation of African Americans, and he's talking about the tension, the bitter generational divide between hip-hoppers and the civil rights / black power generation. So my problem with that is the way that black power and civil rights are conflated as one thing, as one generation, rather than as ideological poles, as fundamentally different ideological stances on how we are to address black liberation in the US and globally. So here's what I mean by that. So a lot of this is hailing back to what we started off the course with. But now with all this, the global hip hop examples that you guys have seen, my hope is that you'll see how we can apply these same questions to the global scene. And I sort of, that was one of the essay questions that you could have talked about commercialization, co-optation, that sort of thing. So my problem very quickly with this, and I'm talking fast because I want to get to the exam, and it's our last class. Obviously, you're not going to be tested on this, so pay as much attention as you want for your interest. But you're welcome to talk to me about this in office hours next year or whatever. I'll be here, and this is the work that I do, and I'm about it. So if you're interested in social justice, if you're interested in issues of race, critical race theory, that kind of stuff, you can continue to talk to me about this stuff. So black power versus civil rights, I gave you this distinction, right? And I told you that they rely on a different conception of blackness, one that is restricted to the U.S. sense, U.S.-centric version, versus black power is inherently internationalist. I've suggested that in the same, I brought up Malcolm X's critique of the idea of civil rights, because Malcolm X said, when your struggle is for civil rights, you're limiting yourself to the jurisdiction of Uncle Sam, the jurisdiction of the United States, thereby granting legitimacy, supremacy to the very power structure that is oppressing you. On the other hand, when you see the black struggle as a, and you can also extend this to other struggles. I'm framing this in blackness because this is the way that the reading has framed it, and because we're talking about hip hop as a black culture. But a lot of what I'm saying you can apply to other axes of oppression, in particular gender, right? So if your idea of women's liberation is problematically middle class or US centric, then, microphone problem again, then I will suggest that detrimental to the majority of women in the world. Similarly, in the same way as if your commitment to black struggle is limited in a non-intersectional and a nationalist framework, precisely as you are working for the advantage of African Americans, you could be working at a disadvantage to Africans. Okay, so Kitwana disses the civil writers, he calls the civil writers, as liberal integrationists, civil rights leadership that just want to get out the vote for the Democrats. Now, I've told my version of black power, the way I'm constructing it for you, not everybody agrees on that. I'm deploying the version by Kwame Ture and people who side with Kwame Ture. There's other people who have different conceptions, including Richard Nixon and others who have their own version of black power as black capitalism, but I would argue that's not really black power. So the problem of conflating, the problem of calling the divide the way that Kitwana does, of identifying this, what he calls this bitter divide between the hip-hop generation and the black power civil rights generation. I am arguing to you that he is misinterpreting an ideological divide, an ideological opposition with a generational one. which depoliticizes the actual tension, right? So here's what I mean by that. I've argued to you that hip-hop is the embodiment, is the continuation of Black power politics, okay? And Black power politics is always in tension, is always a critique of civil rights politics. So when Kitwana is talking about this bitter divide between the hip-hop generation and the older generation, who is representing that older generation? It's people like Jesse Jackson, it's people like Al Sharpton, C. Dolores Tucker. These are the people who took aim at hip-hop. But that's not the previous generation that hip-hop identifies with. Hip-hop identifies with the Black power advocates, Malcolm X, the Black Panther Party, et cetera, et cetera. So the hip-hop generation is not in tension with, or let me say, hip-hop ideology is not in tension with Black power ideology. It's in tension with civil rights ideology. So the take-home message there is I'm claiming Kitwana is seeing something as a generational divide that is actually an ideological opposition. Okay, so the last thing I'll say about this is my last slide. Almost. Last slide on the topic here. Does Kitwana underestimate or overlook the following? The power of commercial co-optation, should be co-optation. But that's funny. If it said poptation, it would be funny because it's going pop. Hip hop is not pop. If you call it that, just stop, says Q-Tip. So is he underestimating the power of co-optation, right? That's what I think when he's imagining that we're going to have this unified front of commercial rappers and underground rappers, where the commercial rappers are going to agree to, stop depicting Black people in ways that Kitwana is arguing are problematic, or minstrel stereotypes that reinforce the myth of Black cultural pathology, that end up blaming Black people for their victimization by white supremacy, with this narrative of Black on Black crime and all this nonsense. But what I think that he's not dealing with here is the imbrication, the deeply embedded nature of the way that capitalism is inherently racist, right? How capitalism creates racism and depends on racism, and vice versa. And that's the subject of critical, when we talk about intersectionality, the intersection of race and class, and the way that a real liberatory blackness, according to Kwame Ture and others that I've been talking to you about, require a commitment against capitalism. And in the other class that I'm teaching right now, that I'm wrapping up along with this class, and I'm teaching it again next year, the problem of whiteness, we're talking about that, right? What does it mean to be white? And what are the intersections of white identity with race and class? So that's the subject of this other class. If you want to know more about it, you could take the class next year. The other thing that I've already alluded to that I think he's overlooking is blackness as transnational and diasporic. And I've already told you why I think that's problematic. But if you want to learn more about that, then you can take my Africa Diaspora course. Oh, I said the Black Radical Tradition. That's wrong. Next fall, I'm not teaching the Black Radical Tradition. That's what I taught last fall. But I'm teaching African Diaspora Theories and Tropes. You do need to be in senior standing if you want to take this course in the fall. But you can get permission. So if you're close to senior standing or whatever, or you're really interested in this topic, you can talk to me about it and convince me that you're ready to take the course. And in the spring, I'll be teaching again the problem of whiteness, which you all have a prerequisite for because this class counts as a prerequisite. So if you're interested in either of those, you can always come talk to me about it. The course descriptions are up on the website. And that's the end of that. So you guys want to look at the exam? Or are you not interested? Okay, well, let's do attendance. and then dismiss anybody who doesn't care. No, it's not. You don't want to see. Okay, all right. I wasn't taking it personally. Okay, let's go. Where are we at? Let's do top hat. Y'all ready to do top hat? Okay. Start with attendance. So let me just say also, it's working? Yeah. I hope you all did, yeah? Question? Okay. The discussion grade? What's the question? Okay, so you did the extra credit, right? 6 out of 0. That's a lot. That's pretty good. That's like, do you mean 6 out of 6? No, it says 6 out of 0. Because it's extra credit. So, okay, yeah, okay, logical. But it didn't get added to my grade at all. Right. Probably because maybe that needs to be calculated at the end because it's extra credit. Because if it was worked out in the system, so I didn't do it. I didn't put it together. Catherine did. I see you. Do you know, are you answering this? Oh, okay. So it's asking your attendance and participation. So if you put in what you think you would get for top hat, they already added the extra credit in there. So like, let's say you got a 90 on top hat and then you got 10 extra credit points, then you would have a 100% for attendance and participation. Cool. Good? Yeah. Okay. Are we in attendance? Okay, we're doing this up. So listen, I want to say to you guys, if there's anybody who didn't do your class evaluation, please do the class evaluations. But also, feel free to send me feedback. If you want to write me an email, tell me what was the best thing about this course, what was the worst thing about this course, what do you think that I can improve? Because this is my first time doing this class. What do you think that I can improve, for the next generation, the next hip-hop generation, right? So, feel free to hit me up and give me your feedback. And you could put all the negative feedback in an email to me and all the positive stuff on the course evaluations. Seems like a fair, way to divide it up. We're good here? Okay. This is your question. Of course there is. No, there's no right or wrong answer. There is a right or wrong answer, but you're going to get the credit no matter how you answer the question. I was going to give you these questions on Kitwana, but I figure whatever. This is a free, a freebie. Just, I wanted you to read it, but I didn't want you to be stressed out and get. It would be a bad taste if, like, I gave you a hard question, then you all got 48% on the last day. That would suck. So I figured you can't go wrong with this one. We good? Did everybody answer? People are not sure. There are 4 people who are like, I don't know if I can change the world. I don't know, Professor D. So complicated. We're so embedded in capitalism. How are we going to fight it? I don't know if I can do anything. There's a hint in which one is the right answer because one has an exclamation point. Like, isn't that clearly the right answer? Let's see if you guys are pessimists or not. Let's see. Okay. There's those last people, they're like, no, it's not happening. The world is going to hell. All right. Let's go to the exam. Yeah. What is the question? everybody should take the extra credit survey, and this is like a consensus thing, because if you don't all do it, then nobody gets the credit, and if you all do it, everybody gets the credit. So there's an email. Did everybody see the email? Yes. Okay. So do this survey, and you'll get extra credit. Thank you. Anything else I should announce? Do you all have announcements? All right. Hold on. I'm just teasing you. What's that? Am I not going to cover what? I have to see the marks. If you guys all like collectively got together and like, we really want this mark to be bumped up, so intentionally you all failed the exam, then yeah, it'll get bumped up. But otherwise, no. My aim is to actually teach you guys stuff rather than have you all fail and then have to bump you up, right? I don't know if it's a lofty goal, but we'll see. Little bit, right? Okay, so if there's anybody who doesn't want to stay for this, I'm not offended if you guys want to leave. Thank you all for being in the course. Give yourselves a round of applause. Enjoy the weather, enjoy the summer. I'll see you in the fall. Okay, let's go. People who are here, shout out the answer. What's number one? B. Number one is what? A. Did you say B? B? I heard D. I'm like, there is no D. Yeah, exactly. It's B, and that was a question you had on Top Hat, right? So the answer is B. Okay, 2, easy one, right? Did somebody say C? B. Third capital, it's B. Okay. 3. A, correct. Okay. Doing good, right? Okay, cool. You can keep mental score, how well you did. Okay, number 4. You guys read faster than me, so when I delay, it's not because I'm building the suspense, it's because I'm slowly reading it. D? If everybody says D, we can just do it by consensus, right? Everybody says D. In each of these disparate locales, dominant theme involves social justice. Correct. You guys got this, right? This was easy. A. That was a good question, right? Did you like that one? That shit really happened. I'm not making that up. Okay, 6. A or B? You see. Does he endorse? A, correct. He was all about globalization, right? Okay, this one might be harder, I don't know. A or B? All in favor of A, say aye. Okay, you guys are in favor of B, right? It's B? Is it A or B? Are you trying to confuse me? Y'all are saying B, right? Let me read it. You said A? Oh, there's tension. There's tension in the room. I have to read it. Y'all interrupted me. I can't read and talk at the same time. Okay. Negative rights, positive rights. It's a hard one, isn't it? Best match. It's easy because there was another question. on this stuff. Then this one is B. Okay, 8. This is kind of fun, right? Are you giving up? You're like, fuck this, I'm out of here. See? Yeah, obviously. Obviously. I made this too easy. Okay. C? Yes, C. Obviously. 10. We good? I don't know who asked me to go back. We good? It was Senegal. A lot of Senegal questions. I was too biased towards Senegal. Okay. Danger of essentializing hip-hop as black. In class, the professor, who could that be, criticized his position because, which one? Both of the above, right? Because the professor doesn't like Andy Bennett. That's why. Correct. Obviously. C. Anybody who didn't know that didn't watch the video. Y'all like this one, right? Obviously D. I was wondering if anybody was going to put Arab League. Like, I don't know, it's Arab something out of 50%. 13. We may actually get through this. We're going fast. Yeah, obviously B. Somebody didn't get that? 14. I like these the professor argued questions. I know these ones. Fundamentally about revolution. They like the sound but disapprove. Yeah, A. Anybody can debate me on any of these. If you don't like the answer, we can have a debate. Looks like we have time. Yeah, sure. Or if you have I do literally mean that if you want to debate me. But also if you have questions about any of these, if you want to be like, okay, how come it's that answer, we can do that. Yes, answer was A. Did you not like that answer? You might have said B. So do you know why? Okay, so I can imagine why you might have put B, right? Because that is what a lot of the scholars were suggesting, right? A lot of the scholars that we read in global hip hop, they were suggesting that outside of the US, these rappers are about socially conscious hip hop, and they disidentify with the gangsteristic and misogynistic tropes of African American hip hop. But what I was trying to get across to you is when they do that, they are anachronistically painting African American hip hop as if it only is and only ever was this kind of gangster trope, right? When in reality, golden era hip hop is what defined hip hop as socially conscious, and that's what founded all these hip hop scenes around the world in France and everywhere else. So they were influenced by that initial pro-black, Afrocentric, conscious version of hip hop, and they carry it on, even though, and many people in the US carry it on, right? And we're seeing a resurgence of that today, but that's not what is, dominant mainstream in the US, right? Okay. That's cool. I'm sure you got all the other ones right. 15. B or A? Some people want it to be B. Young people around the world recognize hip-hop appropriate means combating local oppression because, this is very similar to the previous question, right? It's A. A. Okay. 16. Tenets of hip-hop. Nobody wants A? B. A. 17, the underdog. A. What? Everything's political. It's easy. It's easy. This exam was easy. Everything's political. Know the answer before you answer. Okay, 18. B or A? Correct. 19. This is kind of fun. I never got to do this in a class. Like as a student, but you like see what the answers were. You guys like this? No? Some of you don't like it. This is bullshit. What is the question? According to this article, oh, Kendrick. Oh, this is a good one. You guys like this question, don't you? I don't know. Grammy stage. Oh, the imagery. Okay, what's the answer? E. It's E. Okay, still referring to the Kendrick performance. I assume you all saw this performance. You got a question? Huh? To this one? Oh, okay. Whatever he says. Miriam Guy. Yeah, okay. What's the answer? A. How come? Why is it A? African diaspora, right? That's what it was about. It's just exactly what I'm criticizing Kitwana for. Kitwana is deploying this US-centric version of blackness, right? African Americanness. Whereas Kendrick is gesturing to this idea that pro-blackness entails, of course, solidarity with African Americans, but that solidarity is global, and it needs to include solidarity with African Africans. And vice versa. 21. Are you sure? It's obviously B. Obviously B. Nation of gods and earths. What up, God? What up, kid? That's so easy. It has the word nation in it, right? Okay, C. Okay, this one took a little bit of reading. Somebody said A? Oh, we're split. It's a split decision. What is it? F. Fuck this. F. Which one is not true, right? We're looking for the one that's not true. What is it? Shout it out. C. C. They didn't disidentify with blackness, right? The whole thing about Cuban hip-hop is they're asserting blackness in a culture which argues that there is no such thing. '24. What is it? D? Everybody saying D? That was, somebody was, you know what they were doing. I can't say. Doesn't matter because the answer is D. If you put it as B, you had double the chances of getting it right, yet ironically, you would have got it wrong. Answer is D. 25. Not true. Which statement is not true? C? You all are saying C? Really? You got the other cultural appropriation one right, and now you're saying the answer is C is not true? Oh, it's not true. Okay. You're right. You're right. Good thing I got my coffee. Keep me awake. Okay. That's obvious, right? Do I hear a B? A. Correct. Okay, 27. B or C? B. This is fun. Are you guys having fun? So much fun. Exactly. Otherwise, you would have left. Okay. Oh, it's another split decision? What do they have in common? This should be easy. Let's see. All were post-colonial African leaders, deposed dictators. This one I have to read. Okay, C is definitely correct, right? So, but A is also correct. Post-colonial African leaders who were deposed or replaced by dictators, covert support, blah, blah, blah. Sounds right. Okay, D. 29. Which one is not, which one did she not identify? You guys saying C? C or E? C or E? Who said E? You got it. E. The answer was E. Why? Because, yeah, but so romance was a theme, but it was in the pre-revolutionary period, but it was from an androcentric perspective, like a male-centric perspective, and it was usually, it was argued in the article that it was somewhat misogynistic, it was somewhat degrading to women. And even when, in the post-revolutionary period, when they were exonerating women in a way that was still androcentric. So women were the symbols of propriety that had to be respected in a way that sort of boxed women in to, to these conservative gender roles. That's what the argument was in the article. If you disagree, you can come to office hours. We can argue about it. No problem. But she didn't argue this like gender equality and women's rights. She definitely did not say that's something that they talk about in Tunisian rap. Okay, 30. Cape Town, C. Even though apartheid formally abolished, the government refused to support it. Obviously, C. Stupid. Okay, C was the answer. Was that good? You want to go back to that? Oh, you want? Okay, sorry. So in this documentary, was it a good documentary? Did you like it? Should I show it again next year or not? Yeah? Okay. Okay, the answer was C. Anybody have a question about it? Okay. 31. B. School strikes across the country were so pervasive. Correct. 32. We are almost done. We're going to let out early. We're going to party. Huh? This is subjective? There's no right or wrong answer? Serves as greatest, yeah, okay. I could have said according to somebody. Oh, I don't know if that's subjective. I don't know, because it doesn't say what do you feel or what does a particular artist feel. I think if you did, like if you looked at golden era hip hop and you did a survey of how often a particular figure was invoked, there would be one answer. And it's B. Yeah. Yeah. It doesn't it's not like what who did the most for, right? It's like who is referenced the most. Sure. Yes. Yeah. Which historical figure served as the greatest inspiration for the Black Power movement. Okay, inspiration for the Black Power movement. Now this is how we could argue it, but I'll tell you what I was thinking. And is the most iconic historical figure invoked in the golden era of hip hop. So not only is it like, so there are references, all these people are referenced quite a bit in golden era hip hop, but Malcolm X by far is the most referenced. But second, which figure served as the greatest inspiration for the Black Power movement? Malcolm is the only one that precedes the Black Power movement. So these other people are participants in the Black Power movement. Malcolm was assassinated, and he inspired the Black Power movement. So all these people here, well, okay, Martin Luther King excluded. Kwame Ture, Huey Newton, Angela Davis were inspired to create the Black Power movement by Malcolm X. Yeah, I hear you. More than other ones, I could totally see reading it in a different way. C. Why not D? B. Yeah, obviously C. Okay. D. That was a question where a bunch of you got wrong before, so I gave it to you again. And I assume you all got it right this time. Okay, Joseph Nye. This is easy. Political values, foreign policy, D. 36. If y'all didn't get this, I like hammered this a few times, right? It was B. Ian Condrey, 37. '36 was Maestro. Oh, it was Diasporic African Heritage, B. Question? He is from Canada, but the guy who was like all proud that he was from Canada was classified, not Maestro. So the way that he constructed disidentifies as American in order to lyrically and physically gesture to what? So in lecture, I said this in 2 different lectures, and then it's also in the video, where he says, like I said before, I'm not American, and he points to his African medallions. So he constructs his authenticity and his non-Americanness through reference to diasporic African identity. And that's different than if the question was about classified, right? How does he construct his authenticity in hip-hop and his non-American identity? Then the answer would be proud Canadian identity. Okay, 37? Did somebody say C? I suppose it could be C, but it's not. It's, B. 38. Are you saying B or E? People are split on this one, but you're right, it's E. They can't all be Senegal. I gave a bunch of Senegal answers, right? 39. These are our last questions here. A or B? Of course. Do you guys know what, for A, do you know what I'm actually talking about there? So A is not the distinction between hegemony and imperialism, but it's the difference between imperialism and what? Colonialism, right? So colonialism is a particular type of imperialism that involves geographically discontiguous areas of domination, domains of domination. So the answer is B. Okay, last one. That was a freebie, right? It's obvious. C. All right, guys, thank you for taking the class. I hope to see you guys around next year. We're going to chill. We're going to, cause some problems for white supremacy, whatever. All right? Enjoy your summer.